AI, or artificial intelligence, is the most talked about technology today. The conversations are everywhere, in newspapers, in magazines, in every house, across the world perhaps. It is said that artificial intelligence is probably comparable to the taming of the fire by human being, or the invention of the wheel, or the printing press. Truly, it's revolutionary. So in this class, we will begin to look at what the technology generally entails and how it might affect us presently and also in the years to come. Let's start with a very basic question. Why is artificial intelligence called artificial intelligence? Naturally, naming a technology is the prerogative of the people who are pioneers in it. So there might have been several versions of this technology, predictive algorithms, ways of optimization, trying to discover patterns in data, in natural language processing, machine learning, machine vision. But when we say artificial intelligence, it almost looks as if the technology has an intelligence of its own, and that in itself is very fascinating. So it's a very clever piece of nomenclature so that people begin to feel there is something very deeply intelligent about it. In fact, we do not even have a proper definition of what human intelligence means. Who do we say is an intelligent person? Is it based on the way he or she lives? Is it based on their mathematical ability, their scientific ability, their artistic creativity? We don't know. There are several ways in which intelligence can be created. So why do we then call a piece of technology as artificial intelligence? First and foremost, when you call something like that, there is an aura that surrounds it. For a moment, we'll forget that it's a piece of technology, it is software, it's ones and zeros, bits and bytes that are being run on hardware and using software across network cables somewhere in different parts of the world. We tend to think here is something that can think on its own, understand on its own. But as we understand the technology, the core of it, the basic mathematics, the physics, the computer science that has gone behind it, then it might become a bit more, not so divine in its appearance, but nevertheless, the achievements have been astounding. So when people talk about artificial intelligence, naturally, we must ask what kind of AI are they talking about, because all AI is not the same. Though all of us are very familiar with technologies like, say, ChatGPT, Claude, Notebook LLM, and large language models and so on. And sometimes we know specialized tools like Alpha, which process mathematical and so on. When we think about artificial intelligence, broadly, there are three main categories we can talk about. And we'll also discuss how each of these categories is going to affect certain jobs, certain endeavors that have been considered prerogatives of human intelligence or human creativity. First and foremost is the generative AI, something that can generate text, image, and these days, super good looking videos. There was no need for me to come and sit here and deliver this lecture. It could equally have been an AI that looked very realistically human and which came with a script written by AI itself. In fact, it has become quite easy now to conduct research and generate research papers and even prompt AI to review those research papers very nicely. So generative is a category of AI which has been getting better and better day by day as we know it. Even ChatGPT, it is the GPT part of it is generative, pre-trained, transformer. So these three words we must know. Generative means it has the capacity to create text. How does it create text? Because it is pre-trained, which means we have given it data sets. Now this might be the 30 terabytes of books and journal papers that Meta has used to create its own AI version. So when these kind of texts are available, then some kind of a model is being created inside by this technology, from which something that's called stochastic parroting, which means it will, like a parrot, create text which are very familiar and similar to the patterns that already exist in the text that it has consumed. So it's able to generate, but sometimes we know it hallucinates. It might come up with things which are totally out of the world and which make no sense. There have been early days in which we used to joke about how ChatGPT is totally a complete failure when it comes to mathematical questions. There were instances where people would capture it saying complete nonsense when it comes to mathematics. That's because it is focused on text and generating text, not understanding the mathematical axioms. Neither does it understand the physics unless it has been fed some physics textbooks from which the text can be generated. So that's one side of it, which is why we also have biases built into it. What kind of literature was given? For example, I remember asking ChatGPT a long time ago why Rajaraja Cholan, the great emperor of South India, attacked Trivandrum or Kandalur Shala. The answer is there in some few papers and history textbooks of those who are interested deeply in the history of Trivandrum. Naturally, that information was not available to ChatGPT. So it gave me a very quick answer that Rajaraja Cholan never came to Trivandrum because it never knew. And I'm saying it and knows here in very particular sense by assigning some kind of intelligence to AI. But when I responded that you are wrong, Rajaraja Cholan did come, and then asked again what was the reason, very promptly some text was generated. Now we must understand very clearly, text was generated, not truth, not research-based answer. Text was generated, and it generated beautiful text telling there are multiple reasons like economic reason, political reason, financial reason, military reason, and so on, none of which made any sense in the sense of connection to history or truth. But nevertheless, I got beautifully written text with bullet points and answers which would have worked for any high school assignment where nobody bothered to check the veracity of the facts that were being, so-called facts that were being submitted. So this is an example of training data. You might have seen how in the early days when images were generated, most of them were based on the most commonly available types and races of human beings that were photographed. AI was notoriously bad in the number of fingers in human beings' hands because there were not many images of hands that were supplied to the technology. But faces, it could do a pretty good job. So it all depended on the quality of data that was made available to it. So that's pretty much what's about generative type of AI. The second type of AI, which receives the most hype, is predictive AI. Whether AI is able to predict an election, the potential of somebody getting cancer, how you may pass the examination, where you are headed in your career. So here, there is naturally a lot of hype. The hype that gets very closer to astrological levels. Can people depend on it? People are already using it to make decisions about very vital things in their life. So how good is AI in predicting? When we hear newspaper reports, which are rather sensational, for example, AI can replace all the oncologists or diagnostic doctors in the next 5 years because it can much more accurately predict diseases or diagnose people, then we must always take it with a pinch of salt and go into the deeper research paper from which the newspaper article was derived. It's very easy to twist statistics in our times, and it's very easy for a newspaper to create something that goes viral. In fact, virality has become the basis of generating content. Therefore, if we go deep in, then we'll understand that technologies are still in testing phase. Naturally, AI gets better the more data we supply to it. But again, how can we depend on it? How much we can depend on it is a matter of concern and developing as we go along. For example, in the most recent by-election here in Nilambur, one of the prominent television channels had used an AI prediction tool to get to the final numbers of how many votes each candidate would get. And naturally, the AI came very close. That's because the quality of data that was being fed to it in real time mattered to creating this. So predictive AI, again, use it with a pinch of salt. The third one is the most common type of AI, which none of us are proactively aware of, though it's the most common one that's affecting us. For example, you might be watching this video in Instagram or YouTube channel. The content of these massive social media, the content that is massively created and put in any database, is being moderated by AI. So there is an immense influence of AI in deciding whether the content is good or bad, whether it needs to be removed, whether it can be promoted, and so on. So these things are being affected by the quality of the AI and the instructions that are given to it. Can it judge correctly? For example, it may not get the nuances of different cultures, and therefore people might be unfairly barred from social media or using the platform very effectively. So content moderation AI is something that is very crucial, and that AI again needs a lot of human intervention before it can be considered near perfect, or all of us can believe it to be the sentinels of our social media world. There have been numerous instances where it made the mistake of misidentification or hallucination, which has led to certain videos becoming problematic or certain people being removed from social media sites, after which they had to go through a lot of time and effort to get their accounts back in. Similarly, you might have noticed that when you upload a video or an Instagram short video, sometimes if the tea shop nearby is playing a song and that song becomes rather clear, then that part of the audio might be cut off from your video that you have made, because that again is copyrighted. So this kind of, it's in a sense most beautiful kind of technology which allows us to save a lot of effort, considering this is the kind of content that we must moderate while it goes online, and also plenty of ways in which it allows us to check how people are using or abusing the internet. So there is a wide range of use. Now, if we consider these three types of AI as it keeps getting better, we can also think about what kind of careers might be at risk. Now, it's very strange trying to make a prediction, even a human prediction, about what kind of career might exist or might not exist in future. For example, when the first time automobile came in, when Ford was building the automobiles for the first time in the United States, there were more than 100 companies that were creating automobiles, and nobody knew which company would survive. Well, now we know that General Motors and Ford made it through, and then in Europe there were Benz and so on. But at that time it was very difficult to predict, just as it is very difficult to predict at this point whether it will be ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or Claude, or Perplexity, or which is the AI that's going to survive, because so many of them, and there is DeepSeek from China, and India is building our own AI. So it's very difficult at such a juncture in history to talk about what might or might not exist, but we can always predict something, which is that when automobiles came along, we could very confidently predict that horse cart and horse riding is going to be extinct, and we could be almost sure about it, because New York, if you remember, was the stinkiest place on the planet because so many horses and horse cart, and you can imagine the stench of the horse dung that was there on the streets. So videos, nevertheless, we don't have an AI technology that will give us a sense of smell, but that's how history was, and people really did want to get rid of managing the dung. Therefore, when automobiles came in, it was very clear that the horse and horse riding was pretty much finished. Similarly, are there any professions that we can look at which might become extinct? Now, what AI is very good at so far, like we learned from both content moderation as well as content understanding and generation, something about documentation is going to fundamentally change. AI is able to create a bare minimum documents that are required in most professions. So it's up to document handlers, especially people who translate. I'm not talking about the great kind of poetry, the flowering of creativity and text that will lose its meaning unless there is a human touch in translation. I'm talking about manuals, technical manuals and things like that, which can be moved from one language to another, newspaper articles that can go from one language to another. There, the translation, documentation, creating of manuals and so on might be a job that can very quickly disappear. Again, going back to a New York example, when the lifts came around and elevators were there for big tall buildings like the Empire State Building, it was quite clear that the switches were enough and people were no longer afraid to be in, so there was no need of a lift operator. So that was a profession that was going to disappear. And now if you know history, you know that the lift operators union got together, struck, and they made sure that they could survive for a few more years, but sooner or later it was lost. I mean, we still have lift operators, but that's a different kind of social security that our society provides. But then there might be professions, and some people are already talking about particular type of teaching skills which might be rendered redundant by AI. For example, AI has the capacity to understand, I'm using a human term of understanding, it can figure out what your style of learning, pace of learning it, and therefore, as a personalized tutor, there might be a great future for AI. It could be able to provide you lessons at your own pace after knowing the kind of understanding that you already have of the subject. So step by step, and handwriting recognition, given the advancements in image recognition, have really progressed very well. So correcting of answer papers, tutoring a pupil, really customized education, the kind that we imagined in the book called The End of Average, where we are not lecturing to a large group of people or giving them blanket assignments. We will be able, and the better teachers among us will be able to provide very customized thing, and thereby avoiding the kind of tutoring that is needed. Similarly, content moderation, editing and things like that, there could be a lot of professions which are at risk when AI comes along. So that's something about the three category of AIs that we should remember. And look at this, the amount of cost that is involved will be another factor as far as it is concerned about whether we can use AI in certain areas or not. For example, for OpenAI to keep ChatGPT alive, it takes around 5 to 6 crores of rupees per day, and that's a humongous cost. Now, the cost might come down given new kinds of optimization and new chips that come out of NVIDIA or the other companies, or new kind of optimization techniques like the ones that DeepSeek used. But while we wait for that, there might be areas where still it is better to use human intervention or existing legacy technologies instead of adapting AI very quickly. So things like how artificial intelligence can be used in perfect navigation or identification of a few things, we will still need human intervention, and therefore some jobs like that will be preserved. Most of the studies are pointing out to how manual labor will survive, how we may not be able to replace beauticians and barbers with AI. That's true, because there, unless robotics gets advanced enough, for example, China, day before yesterday, there was a video released that said how farming entirely from sowing to harvesting to preservation of the produce has been completely automated using a robotized tractor, which can detect and plow and harvest and so on. So such end-to-end intervention of artificially intelligent triggered robotic combination is sure to affect a lot more jobs. What jobs won't go away, we know. Something that requires creative lifelong learning and understanding, and people who will themselves become designers of AI systems, people who can use AI tools. There was a Forbes magazine article that said AI will not be taking away jobs, but people who know how to use AI will take away. So they said the future of AI is a girl called Hannah from Texas A&M University. And what they meant was, Hannah, being an undergrad student, had written an article for Forbes after consuming, with the help of AI, the last couple of decades of interviews that came in the magazine. So the interview was conducted asking people from different walks of life to predict how the future would look. Now, it would have taken 5 or 6 years for 2-3 people with PhDs to sit around and assimilate all that data, but she managed to do it in a weekend because she had access to AI, and AI could process this humongous lot of data and get the patterns out that she was prompting it for. So such is the capacity, and that's what we should hope for when we approach AI. How it can become for us a better personal assistant. And now there are agentic AIs which can do end-to-end, not the huge Chinese thing that I talked about in terms of tractors and agriculture, but simple things like making a phone call, following through for an email, making sure that your calendar is properly set, making sure you do all the compliances that are required, keep the legal status going, not to forget things that need to be done and so on, or regular reminders for health checkups, keeping track of your vitals and so on. So we could use AI and agentic AI combination to have a wonderful way of living in which there is a personal assistant. And this can be an assistant that helps us in research. And there is explainable AI now, where AI tells us how it went about creating the final output that it created. And that again is a beautiful thing, because we could know step by step what it did. It can help train us. But the most beautiful thing, according to me, is that the AI is bringing us back to the core essence of education system, which we had forgotten for a long time. If you look at how the Indian ancient education system was structured before we became, married to deep syllabuses and focused only on examination, now we know our kind of the new age culture or the modern culture after this 18th century has been teacher asks the questions, teacher sets the exam and the students are supposed to know all the answers. But if you look at how the education system existed before that, it was up to the student to ask the question and the teacher to answer. So asking the right questions was the most important skill. The word uttaram actually meant an appendix, like a guidebook towards the end. The chodyam, the question, was the most important thing. The prashna was the most important thing. And now, through AI, we are able to train the next generation to ask proper questions. The art of questioning, the art of discovering what the true problem is. And that becomes a key skill. And then this can be an artificial intelligence assistant for us. So through this program, when we want to learn hands-on, it's always better to create a project in which we do something that will affect our lives and the lives around us in a better way. So if AI can help us do a project in which we will do research and find out what is that one problem in society that we can attempt to solve. Is there a business involved in that? Is there scope for entrepreneurship, scope for making and generating more wealth? In that case, let's do that research. With the help of AI, let's create a business plan. Again, with our knowledge, our intuition, our understanding of our hyper-local society, how can we fine-tune that business plan? And then get about setting up a website, creating an app, or writing code for this, all of which has become quite easy now. There is no need for you to learn deep into the language. The only thing you should understand is, are there logical flaws and why some error was being made? There we'll still need human intervention. But otherwise, even if you are a school student, right now, sky is the limit to how you can bring in your creativity, your intuition, your passion for making a change in society through a field that you really love, by learning more about it, using AI tools, and then applying different set of tools to creatively put up your own presence online and then attract more people to it. So this is the broad scope and the basic understanding, the caution with which we should approach, because there is a lot of mathematics and fundamental physics and electronics engineering that's involved in creating this technology, which is a piece of technology. And there are other issues of national security and borders and differences and import and export and so on. So that's one matter that exists. But at the same time, we have indeed been gifted with a technology that can help all of us become better. So let's start using AI responsibly, ethically, and keep on contributing to the betterment of this great piece of human achievement. Thank you.